Ladies, what do you think was the biggest development in 2025 for medical device packaging and why?
So I would maybe start higher level, zoom out. This isn't specific to medical device packaging, but was certainly felt in this sector and across the packaging sector. Um, and when I think about 2025, I think about the shifting global trade dynamics that have been reshaping how medical devices, specifically medical products, are uh, developed and manufactured. I think a lot of the more so on the material sourcing, manufacturing, and distribution end of things, we have seen that those elements are increasingly influenced by macroeconomic and forces, if you will. And that is what I think about when I think about 2025.
If I think about how that could then impact, say, a packaging engineer, right, in the medtech space, it looks like additional pressure on, whether it's sourcing, whether it's cost pressure. There's like a microscope under where different suppliers where they're located and being close to some of the manufacturing facilities, all to really look at cost and ensure that costs are appropriate, because there was a lot of sit and wait as far as what do these tariffs mean? How is this going to filter down? So there was a lot of that happening and a lot of uncertainty. But I will say from what I've seen is folks are, business as usual with a bit of maybe not skepticism, but just kind of watching what's going to happen and being really mindful of making strategic decisions and cost appropriate decisions.
Well, I know tariffs are probably going to continue to make news going forward, at least for, I would say, the first half of 2026, if not even the entire year. And obviously, that does impact supply chain for any packaging professional, as well as you had already mentioned, the costs. So now that we've taken a little bit of a look back, let's look forward. What do you think healthcare packaging professionals need to keep an eye on, and then why?
There are a lot of really exciting things that I'm seeing out there with regard to simulation, with regard to sustainability. I actually say the three S's: sustainability, simulation, and supply chain, right? Those are three topics that just keep coming around and around. And there's just a lot more progress with AI when it comes to simulation and machine learning. I've had a lot of really fun conversations that I can't necessarily talk about specifics, unfortunately, but I've had some really fun conversations around just, thought partnership with folks about what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, how they're using and integrating AI into their daily function. And how they're looking at different ways of testing, different ways of managing risk, all through simulation. So I would say those are some fun, exciting things that folks can start learning more about if they're not already.
So I know that the medical device industry has a couple of challenges as being a regulated industry. Always has challenges because it's a regulated industry. Is there anything coming up in 2026 regulatory wise that we need to know about?
The first one that comes to mind and is increasingly part of the industry dialogue is some of the key dates approaching for PPWR compliance. It's unique in that.
I'm sorry, Kiley, that's the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, PPWR, in Europe. That's their extended producer responsibility law. Okay.
Correct, yes. And what's interesting is this sector has historically been exempt, right, or treated as special. And EPR is really changing the conversation. And so you are hearing from many OEMs, right? How can they, what this means for them? How can they navigate this? And I think the big takeaway is don't wait for healthcare exemptions to disappear, right? Build the systems, build the capabilities so compliance becomes attainable and you're not in firefighting mode. So that is definitely an increasing hot topic. It's not necessarily new. It's been on the horizon for some time. We had actually a panel that spoke on PPWR at the PACOut 2 years ago in 2024. So it's certainly not a new topic, but there are some looming deadlines, some key dates approaching in 2026 that will be impacting medical device manufacturers.
I have a quick question. Is there do you know of additional regulation in the US that's also happening with EPR? Like, are other states, I know it's been on the ballot, but I'm assuming there are additional states that have EPR as well?
So there are Oregon, or California, obviously, Oregon. There are many states that do. The difference here is that the states in the US, healthcare is still an exemption. So healthcare applications. But this conversation is evolving. What you're seeing coming out of Europe that's typically a leading indicator of where other regions go. It's no different than like in the US, right? When California is oftentimes a leading indicator of what's to come. Healthcare applications are typically exempt in other regions that have EPR.
I know you say that exempt from some of the regulations, but I do know a lot of the medical device manufacturers, the MDMs, also still do have internal sustainability goals, specifically around packaging. So even though it's not a regulation per se here in the United States, these global companies will need to adhere to the PPWR and, try to maybe meet some of their sustainability goals that they set internally. Okay, in addition to regulations, the medical device community also needs to keep their eye on standards. And I know that there are a couple of things coming up in 2026 as far as the standards go for packaging, medical packaging. Can you walk us through some of it?
Yeah, I mean, I can hit on a couple of them. You know that there's been quite some work on ISO 11607 Part 3. What we're expecting with that standard coming out is additional process development guidance. So for your sealing practices, for form, fill, seal, for anything that's really creating that sterile barrier. So we're expecting that in sometime in 2026. And then the other one that I believe is out for ballot within ASTM right now is a usability standard. So that's really around aseptic transfer of a sterile medical device, and really it's the components of the sterile barrier and how they, whether or not they have the ability to be aseptically transferred. There's some, whether or not it's intuitive or not. And if folks can do that. So that standard is also expected to be released this year. I know there's another working group that is working on microbial barrier as well. So that working group is really to look at a standard currently that's published with regard to the ability for materials to be a microbial barrier. So that standard is being looked at as far as a revision is concerned. And I think that there might be some other, there are definitely other standards out there that are up for revision or review at least. And I know that there are some minor revisions happening, but those are probably the three big ones that could have the biggest impact in industry.
11607 Part 3, that is a totally new part, if I understand that correctly, right?
Yes, yeah.
I did reach out to the folks at Amy a little bit earlier this year, and they said that they're not quite sure of the timing on Part 3, but it is going to come out sometime this year as far as for review. The draft is going to come out for review. So we will definitely keep an eye out on that. So as a wrap up here, I know that we talked about a couple of things, regulations and standards and, some challenges, but could you guys just give us a sense of what you think is going to be the biggest challenge for medical device packaging folks in 2026 and why?
Yeah, Lisa, when we started the conversation, we talked a little bit about that macroeconomic impact on industry. And while I would not say it's completely widespread, I would say that there's definitely a close look being taken at resources. There have been, unfortunately, some companies that are minimizing their workforce. And so, I would say resources are always something that the packaging community talks about. There's never enough time in the day and enough resources to support a lot of the things that we tend to do. So that's always on the table. I will say it feels a little extra squeezed right now based on what I'm seeing, just from cost pressures, and also, just there are a lot of items that are being looked at from an FDA perspective, right, or from other regulatory bodies to ensure that companies are up to speed on the requirements. And so that sometimes that requires some remediation or some gap analysis work. And when that often happens, that requires additional packaging engineer support. So that tends to put the pressure on the packaging team when they don't have as many folks on the team as they feel necessary.
I think Jen hit on a key theme there for 2026. My opinion, the biggest challenge in 2026 is going to be doing more with less, right? Operational strain, doing more with less. And while, risk tolerance doesn't change in such a highly regulated industry. And they're being asked to, accelerate, time to market, accelerate launches. They're facing increasing sustainability pressure, tighter regulatory scrutiny, and increasing demands, but without unlimited resources, right? To Jen's point. And they're trying to balance all of these conflicting elements, if you will. So the challenge isn't necessarily capability, but remaining disciplined under this pressure. And in my opinion, this might be a little anecdotal here, but the teams, organizations that thrive will be those who simplify, standardize, and really have tight cross-functional alignment, and tap into their or strengthen their industry partnerships, if you will.
And that's kind of a great point too, when you say, to really be smarter with the resources they have. I mean, AI plays a big part in that, right? And I think that people are still figuring out how to use it, when to use it, how to maximize it. I mean, everything I've read on it, any conference I go to that's talking about it, it's really still people just trying to figure out how to use it and how to best use it, because it's going so fast. And so I think the folks and the teams that really embrace it and allow some time to play and figure it out it's going to work wonders for them. So that's kind of what we've seen. That's what I've seen personally and professionally. So yeah, I think that will be a big tool to help us with that challenge.
Ladies, thank you. You have given us a lot to think about, but also some good solutions as well. So I appreciate that. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.